Well, hello. Hello. Seem to have lost audio. Anyone?
Yes, we can hear you, Carl.
Space control to Major Tom.
I thought no one was talking. I thought, oh my word, what's going on? Well, in this week's show, it's episode 482 of the show. We've got a SAF story. Nev's taking points. Armando's giving us the lowdown on flying coats. And we've got a helicopter flying on a tablet. For the military this week, Armando is going to talk to us about a recent Air Force CV-22 mishap. We've got F-16s in Romania and some new US Coast Guard helicopters. So get settled in with the drinks, service and snacks, and fasten your seatbelts for episode number 482. Well, hello everyone. How is everyone this evening?
Marvellous.
Yes, very well, thank you. Yes, not bad at all.
Good. So, Nev, welcome as always onto the show. Good to see you. Nev, what's been going on in the world of Mr. Band this week? 'Cause you've had some issues.
Very hectic, yes. Lots of stuff going, some good stuff. So on Sunday, with the great help of our ATC chum Adam, I managed to take four of my work colleagues up the tower at Heathrow, which was very nice. We spent a few hours up there, and that was as awesome as it always is, I must say. It was really great, and yeah, they were suitably impressed, I must say. It's a great trip, and Adam is just the perfect host, so that was very nice indeed. And then I stayed down at Heathrow because I was in Dublin all week, so I flew out to Dublin on Monday morning and got back yesterday afternoon. Lots of running around down there. But of course, there's always an incident to talk about, so later on in the show, there'll be some Nev's terminal tantrums. Not to be missed.
Looking forward to that, Nev. Very good. Very good. We've got those coming up. We're going to squish them in between some commercial stories, so looking forward to that, Nev. Joining us as well this week, he's back on the show. Thank goodness he's back on the show. But he's got a touch of the cold. Bless him. It's Armando.
Yep, that's how you know it's wintertime. You get a little bit of a cold. I was just telling you guys before we went live that it's challenging to work in an aviation department that only has 2 pilots when you are nursing a cold. So it's been challenging, and it's been just an overall long week, as we'll talk about a little bit later in the show.
I suppose it's one of them things, Armando, when you're up there at the altitudes and stuff, I think you feel colds worse, I think, don't you, when you have a kind of bunged up, kind of nasally sort of thing. I think you feel it worse.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you cannot self-medicate. There's a very limited amount of medications that the FAA allows you to take on your own. So what I tend to do is I offer the left seat up to the other pilot, and that way I can control the cabin pressure, which is really what hurts your sinuses. You can ask for long descents. I think in corporate we're a little bit more, we have a little bit more leeway. We can select our altitudes. I can keep the altitude lower. The passengers in the back will never know the difference between 40,000 feet and 34,000 feet. And if I can, save my sinuses a little bit, helps out.
So Matt's not with us this week, as you probably could tell by the start of the show, but we have got a very special super sub with us this week on the show. He's the guy who does an awful lot of work in the background here at PTUK headquarters, getting all the stories and show notes and stuff put together each week. So Nik, welcome on again. Good to see you.
Thanks, Carlos. Nice to be back. It's been a little while, so yeah, come and see what you guys are up to. And as it's December the 1st, I thought I'd break out the Christmas jumper, give a bit of seasonal cheer.
It's a bit early for that, mind you. You've got kids, though, Nick, so we'll let you off. So we've got loads of news and stuff to get through on the show this week, and let's have a quick look and see who's in the chat room, in the YouTube chat room tonight. We've got Mazouz is in there, Lee Davies is in there, we've got, let's have a look, scroll down, Sturman's also in there, good to see you, Sturman. Hobby Time, hello to you, Hobby Time, and Richard Adams is also in there, good to see you, Richard. Dirk Hess, hello Dirk. Let me just scroll down. John Jester, our resident freight pilot, is also in there tonight. Good to see you in there. Richard E. Flag, great to see you in there, Richard. Ian, hello to Ian. He's in there as well. First live show for several months, Ian. Where you been? Where you been? He's in there. Good to see you. Let me scroll down. Masha's in there. Hello, Masha. Lovely to see you in there as well. Hope you're keeping warm because it's blooming cold here in the UK. Mark's also in there. Mark Precy, good to see you. Our main man, Micah, he's popped in there as well. Good to see you, Micah. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us on the show tonight. Don't forget, if you're listening to us as an audio show, don't forget we're live every Friday night on YouTube. So get that, search for us on YouTube, be Plain Talking UK, hit the subscribe and bell icon to be notified when we are going live with all the latest news on the show. So we've got loads of stuff to get through on the show this week, loads of commercial news and military news as well. So if all the team is ready,
we are all ready.
Let's go.
The captain has turned on the seatbelt light. Please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts.
Do you know what, Nev? It seems like we're always covering stories about the sustainability sort of stuff on the show. But this first one comes to us from bbc.co.uk, and the headline is "Groundbreaking transatlantic flight using greener fuels finally takes off." Now, you may have seen this on your telly boxes this week. This was a Virgin Atlantic aircraft, the first transatlantic flight by a large passenger plane powered by alternative fuels has taken off this week. Operated by Virgin Atlantic, it flew from London Heathrow to New York's JFK Airport. The airlines see the flight, which is supported by government funding, as demonstrating that a greener way of flying is possible. But lack of full supply remains a challenge, while other technologies will be needed to hit emission targets. The flight is a one-off, and it's one of its kind so far, and it's not carrying fare-paying passengers. So-called sustainable fuels, or SAFs, can be made from a variety of sources, including crops, household waste and cooking oils. For this flight, a Boeing 787 was filled with 50 tonnes of SAF. Two types are being used, with 88% derived from waste fats and the rest of the waste from corn products in the US. Following tests and analysis, the flight was approved by the UK regulator, the Civil Aviation Authority, early this month, and a number of companies have been involved in the project, including engine maker Rolls-Royce and energy giant BP. I'm surprised they're involved. The aviation industry is particularly difficult to decarbonise, but airline bosses view SAF as the most effective tool available to bring its net emissions down to zero. Planes still emit a carbon when using SAF, but the industry says the life cycle emissions of these fuels can be up to 70% lower. Shay Weiss, chief executive of Virgin Atlantic, said the airline's flight on Tuesday was proving that fossil-derived fuels can be replaced by sustainable aviation fuel. She said it's really the only pathway to decarbonising long-haul aviation and over having the youngest fleet in the sky, he told BBC's Today programme. It's really a monumental achievement. However, he said there was not enough SAF currently, and added that due to the fuel being more expensive, flight prices would end up being higher. Virgin's founder, Richard Branson, admitted it was going to take a while before there was enough SAF for everyone to use. He said, but if you have to start somewhere, he told the BBC, and if we didn't prove it can be done, you would never ever get sustainable fuels. So the story goes on, but yeah, I mean, this is obviously a groundbreaking flight. It's been done by the aircraft, and it went well, obviously. The aircraft got to its destination, but as the story says, Nev, this stuff doesn't cost 3 pence to make.
Well, isn't it a bit like the electric car? thing. I'm afraid it's more expensive. Whilst maybe being possibly a bit greener, but I mean, this is going to take some time. This is not going to be an overnight thing at all, and I wonder how many of the engines are capable of being run on sustainable aviation fuel as well. These are obviously very modern Rolls-Royce engines that are on the 787. But yeah, I mean, as you say, they've got to start somewhere. But I think this is going to be quite a long haul, if you'll pardon the pun. And this is, we're probably, I don't know, 20 or 30 years away from seeing it on a regular basis, I would say, from what I've read.
What do you think, Armando? Obviously, over in the US, we've sort of stolen the mantle for this, the first, first aircraft to fly out of the UK.
Yeah, well, it's got to fly back, doesn't it? No, I don't. I think we're probably Europe and the US are working fairly closely. Since all our OEM manufacturers are all cross continent, so I'm sure the crosstalk is happening. I think more for me, I'm not sure it's going to make its way to corporate aviation anytime soon. I anticipate that the cost savings are going to be more for the airlines first, and then the technology will trickle down to other aviation sectors, I suppose. More, applicable to me, it's similar technologies are happening with the unleaded aviation, general aviation fuels. So, we use 100 low lead fuel right now in all small piston engine aircraft, general aviation, and that's also kind of going by the wayside, and they're working hard to replace that with unleaded fuel. So I think both of these fuels are the way of the future, and like Nev said, I think general aviation unleaded fuel will probably be around more available in the next 3 to 4 years. But yeah, like Nev said, I think it's going to be a minute before we see this all promulgated through the industry.
Also, I wonder how easy it is to switch between the two. When this aircraft got to the US, did it fuel up with standard aviation fuel to the return journey?
I think from what I saw, it was going to be refueled with just standard Jet A. So doesn't seem like the engines will need much modification. I know the general aviation side for the unleaded fuels, I don't think it's going to take much modification, but you do need to get an supplemental type certificate for that fuel in that engine, in that airplane. Probably going to be more of a paperwork drill like everything else aviation.
Yeah. Nev, you've got the next story, and it's about that thing that we used to do many years ago in the late 80s and early 90s, but I think it's a thing of the past now, but I don't know.
Oh, no. We can do it a lot now in the UK. But there's some caveats, as I shall mention later on. This is on the businesstraveller.com, and it says that British Airways has announced a new Avios partnership with World Duty Free. Executive Club members can now collect Avios when shopping at World Duty Free shops at London Heathrow Airport, providing they also sign up to WDF's Read by Dufree loyalty programme and enter their Executive Club details in the scheme's app. Customers will then earn one Avios per £1 spent at the airport, as well as a bonus of 250 Avios on their first purchase when scanning the QR code within the app. Avios will be awarded within 72 hours of eligible purchases, and BA said that savvy shoppers can also use their BA American Express card to pay for their purchase, collecting even more Avios. Note that according to this page, to the page on BA's website, members can also collect Avios at participating stores operated by Dufree at Heathrow, Barcelona, Madrid and more airports in Spain. The page also states that certain products or product categories such as tobacco or alcohol may be excluded, and you will not be able to collect Avios when you buy them. Brilliant. Finally, note that a maximum of 3,000 Avios can be earned per transaction, and there is a limit of 2 transactions per day and 30 per month. Commenting on the news, Colm Lacey, who's British Airways Chief Commercial Officer, said, "We know how much collecting Avios makes a difference to our customers' travels, so we continue to find new ways of making it collecting it even easier. With World Duty Free's expansive presence at Heathrow, there'll be plenty of opportunity for members to collect Avios, bringing them one step closer to their next flight, holiday or experience." The Heathrow Rewards Programme also offers members 10 points for every £10 spent in the airport shops, including World Duty Free stores. These points can be converted into Avios at a rate of 250 points for 250 Avios. A business traveller could not see anything in the terms and conditions for the Red by Dufry partnership to say that the two offers could not be used in conjunction, so readers should present both their cards when making purchases. Now, you were just saying, Carlos, is duty free a thing anymore?
I know.
Well,
years ago, it
let
used
me
to be
give you
a thing.
a quick example of why it should be, but it isn't. Going through Dublin Airport this week on the way back, there's obviously Dublin's in the EU and the UK isn't. So I thought, here we go. Big duty-free purchases coming up. I thought I'll bring back a bottle of Bailey's for Mrs. Nev.
Ooh.
Now, in our local store, it's available for £10 per bottle at the moment, which I think is a really good price for a bottle of Bailey's. In the World Duty... No, sorry, it wasn't World Duty Free. It was one of the other... shops in Dublin Airport, it was €24 reduced to €17 as a special deal, which is still more than £10. So the answer to your question is not necessarily.
Yeah, do you remember the days when, you know, in the kind of, well, let's say early 90s, I suppose, when you used to take these sort of package deals abroad to Spain and stuff like that? You'd go to an airport and you'd get, you know, I mean, a lot of people who smoke would have cheap cigarettes and cigars, but you'd get a cheap bottle of whiskey, you'd get a cheap bottle of rum or gin, and it was always, you know, half the price it would cost you on a high street shop. But now I just think you can go online, you can go into a supermarket branch here in the UK and purchase said alcoholic items for less money than they cost in an airport.
Well, yeah, of course, you've got to remember that at the height of duty free back in the day, you could not buy alcohol at the same sort of price that you can in supermarkets. In fact, you could only buy alcohol from off licenses and specialist places, and of course it was far more expensive, wasn't it? So, but yeah, it's quite a thing. But you've got to do a lot of it to make it sensible, and also that the deals aren't that great, as I've just highlighted. You know, some of them, there might be some deals here and there, but, you know, generally speaking, I think it's aimed at the passenger that's transiting from one place to another through the airport, and they might want to take their host or, you know, their wife, girlfriend, husband, boyfriend, whatever, brother or sister, a bottle on the way through. So that's the way to do it, probably, isn't it? But, yeah.
Of course, if you live in the US, you don't have to worry about things like duty free because the alcohol is so ridiculously cheap. You could just buy tons of it. Hi, Armando.
I can't remember the last time I shopped at a duty free. I guess maybe a Toblerone there at Heathrow or something.
Yay! Nothing wrong with a Toblerone. That is the way forward. Now, Amanda, you've got the next story, and I love these ones.
You know, it's not often that we actually hear feedback or that we have a story on the show, and then, you know, a month later or 2 months later, we actually see the outcome of this. So this is from South Korea. The story is from The Independent. The South Korean airlines will now be mandated to warn passengers against opening doors, according to new operational guidelines. I have a funny story about this too. But this new regulation comes after a series of incidents in which some passengers have tried to open some emergency exits while flying, some of them having been successful. The Korean government said in the guidance that was included a draft amendment of the operating guideline for airline operators, and that it will be under review until next week at time which public announcement's going to be made about this. So it's unclear whether this rule applies to foreign airlines flying in and out of South Korea. The Independent contacted the Korean Office of Civil Aviation for further information. I think we're still waiting on that. But this new advice comes after a series of incidents which some passengers, like I said, opened some emergency exits. In May, there was a man that succeeded in opening the door of an Asiana flight shortly before it landed in Daegu. 12 people on that flight were injured, and police later said that the man in his 30s faced up to 10 years in prison. The 10-year penalty is in line with South Korea's aviation security laws and applies to any passenger who, quote, interferes with plane entrances, emergency exits, or devices that hinder the security or operation of an aircraft. And more recently, there was that woman that was arrested for trying to open a plane door on a flight from New York to Incheon. And she was apprehended by members of the cabin crew, later tested positive for crystal meth, as one does before boarding a long flight like that. Either way, so like most other airlines, South Korean airlines currently are required to make announcements about smoking, about the use of electronic devices, and any actions that would prevent the cabin crew from performing their duties. But now they're going to have to add, please don't open the doors mid-flight to that. So I don't, here in the US, I think it's funny because when you sit on an exit row, the cabin crew has to get a verbal confirmation, right? That, are you willing to help? And you have to say, yes, I am. But I feel like now they're just going to have to go down the whole aisle of the rest of the airplane and just say, can I get a verbal confirmation that you're not going to try to open the doors? Only the people in 10 and 11 and row 1. So. That's
one thing you've never had to worry about, isn't it, Nev? Having to be asked to open, be able to open the overwing exits.
Well, no, absolutely not. But here we are again. Do people not understand the physics of the whole thing? No. I mean, it's my understanding that on the takeoff roll in most airlines, when takeoff power is set, the aircraft begins to pressurize, or soon after that.
Sorry, most of them are on a weight on wheels switch. Right. Okay. So it's usually 5 to 10 seconds after rotation. Yeah. Because what you wouldn't want to do is run off the runway and the airplane is already pressurizing.
Yeah, that would be suboptimal, wouldn't it? Yeah.
So it'd be bad form. Just
good point. But I can't even believe we're having to have this conversation. But we are, unfortunately, because
they're called plug doors for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Extraordinary.
But do you remember? I think it was like 2 months ago I was on the show. Maybe it was the last time I was on the show live. But I had gone through TSA here in Charlotte, and they asked for my ID, my boarding pass, and then they said, no weapons past this point. I said, oh, I'm sorry, you have to say that to each passenger now? It's like, yeah, it's the issue du jour.
It's just you, Amando. They done it. They knew your background.
This beard.
This beard. Yeah. Nik, you've got the next story, Nik, all about lightning.
Yeah, well, it's a good old 747 story, and I think, we always love to fit a 747 in, don't we? So, undetected degradation of key lightning protection system parts have prompted Boeing to recommend a prompt inspection on all 747s. And this is an FAA mandate for the work on US registered aircraft. So Boeing uses several layers of protection to ensure that the feed tubes that run into fuel tanks do not become ignition sources when lightning strikes engine nacelles. Among them is a bonding jumper or cable outside the fuel tank and sealant over the fuel tank's interior wall. These serve as secondary protection beyond the primary electrical path, which are wing spar fittings. Fittings are subject to degradation and they can limit their lightning protection effectiveness, making secondary protection critical. Boeing recently discovered 747 jumpers are failing at an excessive rate, and the FAA Airworthiness Directive is set for publication, or was set for publication on November the 30th. And Boeing also found another latent failure, a complete crack around the circumference of the fuel feed fitting encapsulation inside one of the 747-8 fuel tanks. This encapsulation is designed to isolate any sparks or arcing generated during a lightning strike because of failed electrical bonds from flammable fuel vapors in the tank, the agency said. This is an urgent safety issue, as all fuel feed lightning protection features now have evidence of compromise. This issue affects all 747 variants, the agency determined. The FAA directive, which was not subject to a pre-publication public comment period due to the severity, orders 747 operators to conduct inspections within 90 days of its effective date, that being December the 15th. All variants must be checked within 120 days of that date. So this has me in mind, I think there was a 747 which actually blew up, having taken off from New York, and that was a fuel vapor issue, wasn't it, on the I think it was the main center tank that ignited, but I can't remember the flight number for that. I don't know that was a lightning strike issue, but obviously it's it's pretty serious issue that you have to try and mitigate.
Yeah, that also was in 2023. We're even talking about this because the aircraft's been in production for so long. I know the Dash 8 is obviously the latest variant of it, but you would have thought, unless there's been some manufacturing issue perhaps, that this would have been picked up a long time ago.
Yeah, it's quite reassuring in a way, isn't it? It shows that they're sort of still on it, and that safety inspections are still picking this kind of stuff up. At least it kind of goes to show that routine maintenance is sort of doing its job in terms of flagging any potential issues.
That was TWA 800, Nick.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and additionally, the part may be common to other aircraft too. I mean, if you're thinking about bonding straps between fuel lines to the fuselage, or to the metal parts of the fuselage, that actual part may be in use in other Boeing products or Airbus products. So if they're showing degradation or corrosion in these 747s, it may not be isolated to just this aircraft.
Yeah. Well, lightning is not a, we all know lightning's not a big hazard to aircraft these days. Whether you see the pictures you see online look more dramatic than they actually are in real life, I think, isn't it right, Amando?
Wait, I can't tell if you're joking or not.
No, I mean,
when you're sitting in an airplane and you get hit by lightning, it's an emotional event.
and you have?
I've gotten hit by twice.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Both over the Gulf of Mexico.
Wow. Recently?
Yeah. No, years ago. Okay. Once in a C-130 and once in an Osprey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No. You hear it, smell it, feel it.
Yeah.
Wow.
In the C-130, it took out a good chunk of the aileron, or not. Yeah, went in the aileron and out the tail, out the elevator. Probably took out a softball sized chunk out of the tail.
Wow.
Gosh. So with a break to the commercial news, it's time for this.
Attention, this is the final call for British Airways Flight 475. Paging from House with Mr. Neville Miles. Your seat 1A is waiting for you.
Nev.
Well, I've been flying this week, and of course something always happens, doesn't it? Although actually the flying bit of it was pretty straightforward, especially coming back. We had a brilliant sort of tailwind coming back from Dublin to Heathrow this week, and it was a really quick flight. Straight on to 09 left, no messing, and we actually arrived half an hour before the published arrival time, which was absolutely brilliant. But of course, as we know, getting on and off the aircraft and within the security area, there's always trouble. And I was not disappointed this week as I came back through Dublin Airport, so on the way to the lounge. And there is a reasonably sized queue in the security bag check area. And that's mainly because people aren't actually taking their trays off of the conveyor belt. They're actually taking bits and pieces out of it and putting it in their pocket as they go. So this is causing a bit of a backlog. It's not ideal, and I think it's just a bit of poor management on behalf of the airport, because that could have been dealt with. But their solution to this was to shout at people. And they were doing that a lot. So the security operatives were doing a lot of shouting at the passengers, but then the passengers were shouting back at them. So that made for a very interesting 5-minute period as I observed this. So I was trying to put on my belt and my watch and put my phone back in my pocket, the usual stuff. Quick tip from Uncle Nev: don't shout at the passengers. It's never a good thing, and it just made it worse. For a couple of minutes. It was the cacophony of sound was absolutely awful. But they eventually got themselves sorted out again. But it was a bit of an unnecessary thing, I would say. And then somebody wanted to get into the Terminal 1 lounge behind me, but didn't have the correct status to do so, or wasn't on a business class ticket either. And so he decided to take issue with the poor lady on the desk, and that resulted in loudness and shouting and unnecessary stuff. All I wanted was a coffee and a bun. But yeah, so it's a bit of a shame people can't behave themselves under those situations. But that's what happens. So yes, actually, the flying bit this week was pretty reasonable. But yeah, it's the bit in between, isn't it? Always.
Well, thanks, Nev, for.
Attention, this is the final call for British Airways Flight 475. Paging for passenger Mr. Neville Bounds. Your seat 1A is waiting for you.
Always great to hear from you, Nev, each week. I tell you what, I wish you flew every single day of the week, because we could have a whole podcast dedicated.
Well, I think we'd run out of time on the show if we did that. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Now, Amando, you've got the next story.
Well, we continue on with more automation taking over aviation. This is from the manufacturer.com. Airbus has successfully tested a new, what they're calling a simplified human interface, along with advanced autonomous features through a project codenamed Vertex. These technologies are developed by Airbus's Up Next. They're controlled by a touchscreen tablet that aim to simplify mission preparation and management, reduce helicopter pilot workload, and further increase safety. Airbus's helicopters flight lab flew fully automated from liftoff, taxi, takeoff, cruise, and approach, and then landing during a 1-hour test flight following a predefined route. During this flight, the pilot monitored the system, which is, I think, what we usually do anyways, even when we're flying, which is able to detect unforeseen obstacles and automatically recalculate a safe flight path. Whenever necessary, the pilot can easily override the controls, thankfully, through the tablet, and resume the mission afterwards. The flight test period lasted from the 27th of October to the 22nd of November at the Airbus helicopter facility in France. Apparently, Airbus is going to continue to mature the different technologies that comprise Vertex, and keep working on their fly-by-wire stuff and human interface stuff. And I think we'll all be ready to be pilots if we can just fly helicopters with an iPad.
That takes all the fun out of it, though, Armando. It's much
It
better.
really does.
Yeah. Why would you want to do it with a touchscreen when you can have a nice yoke or control stick, throttles, all the bits and bobs?
Or can you imagine when it gives you the temperature warning, like your iPad's about to shut down, and you're like, what am I supposed to do now, right? Or you get the 8% battery warning. Do you want to go into low power mode? No, I don't. Yeah.
What do you think, Nev? This is all a bit too much, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, I'm not an expert in this area, so I can't really comment. I mean, it's flight automation, of course, has come on such a long way, but as we well know, having the pilot in the loop is still, two pilots in the loop, preferably, is still an important part of what goes on. I mean, I think it's interesting that they're experimenting with different things, and they can prove that certain things work. But trying to find out what the real world use for it would be, I don't know what that is, I have to say. But,
Stick
well,
to
it's,
proper flying.
the fact that it says whenever necessary, the pilot can easily override the controls through the tablet. Well, yeah. So why do you need to do that?
Not to
kind
mention
of their job, isn't it?
yeah, and the tablet is 1 foot, officially 1 foot from the actual controls.
Yeah.
Do you think this is sort of part of Airbus's? If you were to compare Airbus airliners with Boeing airliners, there's arguably more automation in an Airbus, perhaps.
Sorry, I thought you were gonna go with this is already what they do.
Right. Well, it's kind of as a layman, it's often perhaps the perception that an Airbus aircraft may be more simplified or automated compared to a Boeing aircraft. So perhaps this is their kind of their way of making helicopters easier to learn or easier to become proficient at flying.
Flying
perhaps.
It's not easy. Fixed wings away forward. In come the emails.
Jeez, I would love to agree with you, but all these eVTOL things popping up, I think vertical lift is going to be the way of the future.
So, moving on to the next story, moving away from all things automated now. And good news if you want to go and get yourself an apprenticeship, because aircraft manufacturer even, this is from the businessdesk.com, Airbus is seeking to recruit more than 200 apprentices, probably to use iPads, at its Broughton site near Chester. The site, which currently employs 5,000 staff making wings for all the group's commercial aircraft, is holding an open doors event next week to attract the next generation of young staff to work at the plant. Airbus head of Broughton plant, Jerome Blandin, said, "We will welcome potential apprentices, including school leavers, and beyond next Saturday, December the 9th, when the event kicks off at 1:30. The manufacturer wants to take on 239 new apprentices, blimey, at the site next year, which includes everyone in its early careers program, such as graduates, undergraduates and interns." Mr. Blandon said, "Our apprentice program is world leading, and this year we had a record number of early careers starters join the Broughton family," he said. For a lot of leavers, however, they don't know what opportunities there are out there, so we really want to encourage those who have not thought about a career in aviation to really consider it, he said. And that starts with our Careers Day. The pioneering spirit that was here when the Wellington bomber was assembled in record time still shines 80 years on. He said it's not by accident that a majority of all Airbus wings are made right here in Broughton. It's thought so there's sustainable investment into people and technology. He added, "What an exciting time to be joining the industry," he said. "Those who join now will be at the forefront of finding real solutions to decarbonising aviation." Airbus is looking for craft and technical apprenticeships in aerostructures and aircraft systems and Testing Group, STG, Air Tool Maintenance, ATM, tool room jobs, mechanical and electrical maintenance jobs as well. Also machine shop and facilities management, and that in turn will lead to roles as qualified aircraft operators, electricians or mechanical maintenance operators and machinists. The undergraduate degree apprenticeships include opportunities in engineering, business, digital and technology solutions and HR as well. Successful applicants, apprentice applicants, will be sponsored to study towards their respective qualifications while earning on the job at the same time. Now, it just seems to me like whoever applies for this is going to need probably 1,000 A-levels and 10 degrees in maths, but I might be wrong. What do you think?
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Certainly, if I think about our industry, the one I work in professional audio, we really struggle to attract people at the lower end of the age range. You know, the 20 to 22-year-olds, for example, because we don't really have proper apprenticeships in my area of business. When you're talking about engineering, that is a really good area for being an apprentice, and I think that there is definitely scope, even if you haven't got the degree that you wanted, or you haven't got the grades that you wanted, for example. I think most employers, such as Airbus, would definitely negotiate a way of finding you something somewhere. Now, obviously, these jobs often are very oversubscribed, but it's good that they're taking the initiative to actually get people in the first place. And I think that's a good side of things. And for sure, you know, we're going to need more and more people coming in at this level. That's for certain.
Nick, you're obviously here in the UK with us. This is, you know, you've got young children as well. Is this something you'd like your youngsters to partake in?
Well, actually, it's. I think there are a couple of issues where, for some younger people, they might not necessarily have a career path in mind. Some people don't necessarily want to go and do a degree and kind of do go the old-fashioned way of, you know, go and do a degree and then start a particular career path. And this, I think, is a great way for younger people, you know, school leavers even, to be able to actually go and have a hands-on experience and you know, learn a trade and learn skills. And actually, you know, I think the thing that's important to a lot of employers nowadays is actually that you have experience of doing the job. And for myself, you know, I'm a design engineer in my day job. I've been working in engineering for more than 25 years, and you know, I'm very firmly in my late 40s, not getting any younger. And you know, that's certainly something that you see, is that there aren't a lot of younger people coming into the manufacturing industry. So yeah, I think it's actually really good to see the likes of companies like Airbus that are actually recognizing that, and they are kind of taking steps to allow different career paths for people to come into the industry.
Yeah, Mark Priestley makes a good point, actually, Nick, as well, in the chat room. He says, have to do this and more in schools. They are the future, and keeping aircraft museums is also key to encouraging them into a great industry. That's a good point. Yeah. It's I think, you know, it's really important that we get younger people engaged with engineering, and you know, manufacturing in particular has receded in the UK. We still have an awful lot of very skilled people and a lot of skilled niche areas of industry within the UK. So yeah, it's very important that we keep those skills alive, and that you know, although we perhaps nowadays recognise sort of Asia and Far East as being the centres for manufacturing in volume, the UK is still very much the place where a lot of R&D happens, and a lot of the innovation actually occurs at the sort of development end of manufacturing. So yeah, it's really important to keep that alive. Any thoughts before we move on, Amando, over in the US?
No, I completely concur. Here in the US is the same. I'd love to see more avenues to get into the industry, not just as pilots.
Staying with you, and Armando, you've got the next story, and this more fits in with your day-to-day job.
Oh, I was just thinking, I didn't pay Nick to put this story in there or anything. I had nothing to do with this, but this is specifically about corporate aviation. As you guys know, private aviation, corporate aviation has seen a significant growth since the start of the pandemic. Those who could afford it preferred private air travel over commercial air travel, especially during the pandemic. Over the last couple of years, the private aviation sector has grown 23% in the United States alone. So more and more private aircraft management companies are being launched, catering to a growing demand of private and business jets. Similarly, private jet manufacturers are pushing hard to increase production, as we've seen from Textron and Embraer and Dassault and all those aircraft manufacturers. But depending on the size of aircraft, and I actually get asked this question quite a bit, new private jets can cost anywhere between 15 million and 80 million. That's 80 million US dollars. Now that is for a small to medium-sized jet. That doesn't include the larger business jets, such as BBJs or the Airbus ACJ. Most of those jets are well over into the $100 million category. But probably one of the more famous, it used to be Learjet. Now we kind of think of Gulfstream as the industry image of corporate jets. So the Gulfstream G700, it's a large business jet that can accommodate up to 19 passengers in a standard configuration. up to 10 passengers, if you can imagine this in a sleeper configuration. That aircraft has a maximum speed of Mach 0.925. That's nine tenths the speed of sound. The aircraft has a maximum range of 7,500 nautical miles. It's about 13,900 kilometers. Now, this aircraft was unveiled by Gulfstream in 2019, entered service a couple years ago, 2022. So as far as the capital and the operating cost, the Gulfstream G700, that's a $75 million aircraft out of the barn. That's brand new. It is one of the most expensive jets in its class due to technologically advanced systems. It's got extraordinary flight capabilities. While that can be shared, that cost among fractional owners, the aircraft also has a pretty hefty operating cost, which varies on usage. There's a great website, libertyjet.com, that shows the annual operating costs of flying the Gulfstream G700 can be up to, well, you can surpass it, but on the high end, $3.25 million per year, depending on the usage. That's for a Gulfstream that's being used about 200 hours per year, will be somewhere around the $2.2 million mark with an average cruising speed of 550 miles per hour. That kind of works out to about $19.69 per mile, if you can imagine that going down the highway there on the ML Avalon or something like that. The more you operate it, the cheaper it is actually to operate. So if you take a Gulfstream G700 and fly it 400 hours a year, that can be somewhere around $3.3 million. That brings it down to a much affordable $15 per mile at the same average cruise speed. So it's the same with big airplanes, little airplanes. The more you fly it, the less cost per hour it is to run. If you take all of those numbers for a Gulfstream, at least, that works out. If you're flying it 200 hours a year, it's about $10,000 an hour, more or less. If you fly it 400 hours a year, then it comes down to about 8,300 US dollars per hour. And I think Nick actually added some questions here. Let's see. I think you were wondering, Nick, how that compares to what we fly in the Hawker, right?
Yeah, I was sort of interested with your experience, and I'm obviously not looking to kind of delve into any sensitive information with your particular employer, but I was just interested to know if 200 or 400 hours was a kind of fairly typical figure, and how that would compare in your experience.
Yeah, I think there's two, maybe three factors that I would throw in there. So ours is a private owner, and they are the only ones that use the aircraft. So the aircraft is not on charter. It's not publicly available or anything like that. So we actually only fly about 150 hours per year for our aircraft, and that's a 2-aircraft flight department, both Hawker 800s. Our annual operating budget is $1.2 million per aircraft. That's for about 150 hours, give or take. If you were to put an aircraft on charter, now a lot more people are using it. So I would say 200 hours a year is pretty reasonable, maybe even more than that, 400. If it's a really busy, like a NetJets or something like that, then the aircraft are going to far exceed that. And then the third factor I would throw in there is we generally fly 2-hour legs. If you own a Gulfstream 700, you're probably flying 10-hour legs. So number of flights per year may be around the same, but they're obviously doing much longer legs. So,
which I suppose arguably is better from a maintenance point of view because you're doing less cycles.
Less cycles, yeah. Less cycles on the landing gear, the aircraft, the engines. And
I guess in the case of your employer, it would actually probably make financial sense for them to charter the aircraft when they're not using it as a means of generating an income against that asset.
That is an option, and that has been presented to them. I don't think they want to share their aircraft. That would be like Nev letting people drive his car, his banana, right? Or did you know that? Have you guys heard of Turo?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be like
the-
Nev putting his pride and joy on Turo to try to offset some costs.
Yeah. I could do that with my car, but nobody would want to drive it.
What are your thoughts, Nev?
Well, I would like a G700 very much. Yes, I think I could cope with that. The sleeper version, definitely.
Can we put some of those pictures up, please, Carlos? Because it looks absolutely stunning.
Yeah,
It's a great airplane.
I did pop. I'll pop them up again. Here we go. There we go.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, our flight department is actually looking at upgrading aircraft, not necessarily for size, but more because the Hawkers are getting a little bit long in the tooth now. So parts availability, getting into service centers. It is a Textron aircraft, and they kind of inherited the Hawker, right? They didn't build the Hawker, and for us, I think one of the things that you were wondering, Nick, about cancellation for maintenance issues, we don't really have a lot of cancellations. Hawker's pretty reliable, pretty high dispatch rate. The problem is when it does go into phase maintenance, that getting some of the parts, even tires, are taking a couple months. Windshields take us, 4 to 6 months to get. So I think the owners don't want to be told no, that your airplane's not available. So I think we're looking at comparable to ours. We're looking at getting either a Gulfstream 450, a G450, or a Dassault Falcon 2000. It'll probably be one of those. Maybe an Embraer Legacy, but it's getting a little bit newer and pricier. I don't know that they want to spend that much money. So
Wow.
I am leaning towards the Dassault, towards the Falcon. That would be a great airplane to
But
fly.
yeah, I can imagine for the sort of person that's spending upwards of $1 million a year for that overhead of the convenience of having a jet. They don't want to have that jet stuck on the ground for 4 months because they can't get a windshield for it.
Yeah, and and these numbers are all relative, right? So I mean, to them, going to a Dassault, to a Falcon 2000, for us, we could sell both Hawkers and get a single Falcon 2000 for maybe $8-9 million, and then your operating cost goes up to just under $2 million. So for them, it would be almost negligible, the increase in flight per hour, but much more reliability for the future.
Right.
I have
That's
jump
cool.
seated on a Falcon 2000 from East Midlands Airport to Le Bourget back in the day.
Wow.
For a well-known construction company manufacturer. And that was
Beautiful.
great, sitting between the two pilots for 50 minutes. That was a treat, that was. But tell you what, whilst we're on the subject of corporate aviation, have you noticed on your breakfast television this morning, all the broadcasters are getting themselves in a right tizzy about COP28, the climate change summit, and the fact that people are having to go there, in many cases, by private aircraft. Once again, I'm not an expert, but you're holding it in Dubai, roughly in the middle of the world. Oh, that's a massive generalization, I realize. People are going to have to get there somehow. And I find it absolutely unbelievable that this was the top story on two of the broadcasters' programs this morning here in the UK. Notwithstanding all the stuff that's going on in Gaza, Israel, Ukraine, Russia, all of that seriously bad stuff. Now, obviously, a climate change conversation has to be had, and I understand all that. But honestly, to hijack the whole of the news with the disgust and amazement that these world leaders have had to travel by aviation to a climate summit, I'm missing something here. I definitely am.
Yes. Mike has just said in the chat room, actually, Nev, he said the Vice President of the US went there today, obviously flying on a 757 or the C-32.
Yes.
Anyway, Steve.
I was going to say, as we're talking about, aircraft efficiency and pollution and stuff, let's go back in time to some of these aircraft where seeing a 3-mile trail of black smoke was a treat for all of us.
So many memories. Nev, you've got the next story, and this is such good. This is so good.
Well, actually, talking of black smoke, there's a couple of aircraft here that definitely fit into that category. I would say it's on warbirdsnews.com, and it says that Cypriot company Zeller Aviation have acquired famous abandoned Olympic airliners. Well, two of the rusting, stripped-down passenger jets that once belonged to Olympic Airways, which had been abandoned at the Helincon airport since 2001, were recently acquired by the Cypriot company Zeller Aviation. The objective of the company is to restore the once abandoned airliners and display them to the public. For 6 decades, the home served as the Greek capital main hub for commercial airlines. It was the Greek home of the golden age of travel, handling around 12 million passengers per year. But following the opening of the current Athens International Airport in 2001, Helincon was neglected and is now caught up in years' worth of bureaucracy and debates surrounding what the airport site should be used for. One jet is now a rare BAC 111. Now, if you want an aircraft which had twin jets of black smoke coming out the back in the day, that's one of them. And very loud before they fitted the hush kit, but sporting the colours of the Hellenic Air Force, which belonged to the Cyprus Airways fleet. Once the aircraft is restored, it will be donated to the municipality of Lavrio and will be placed next to the city's harbour. The initial idea was to transport the aircraft to Cyprus in the historic colours of Cyprus Airways, but at the current stage, the transportation process was deemed particularly difficult and expensive. The second aircraft is a Boeing 727, which was acquired in 1968 by Greek millionaire Aristotle Onassis for the legendary fleet of the Olympic Airways. After maintenance and renovation, this aircraft will be preserved until a final decision is made regarding its location where it will be displayed. The president of Zeller Aviation, Andreas Christodoulos, says that these two aircraft are part of the history of Greek and Cypriot aviation. The exhibition of these two aircraft to the public will provide an opportunity for people, especially the younger generation, to travel back in time and discover the fascinating world of the aviation industry. Zeller Aviation, since its establishment in 2006, has been active in the field of aircraft wet and dry leasing, chartering and aircraft sales. With offices in Cyprus and the United Kingdom, Zeller Aviation provides a range of service for its clients located in Europe, Asia, Africa and the North and South. So quite interesting, isn't it?
Honestly, these aircraft now, these have been photographed so much online. There's not many aviation kind of geek sites that don't have pictures of these aircraft sitting here. And they've been there, as you say, for a number of years. But, you know, the old BAC 111, I remember flying on one of those with British International Airways, BIA, back in the late 80s to Yugoslavia. And yeah, really, it's such a. Oh, I can still remember as well the glorious orange and white livery of the aircraft, and of course the 727 as well. Another aircraft that I flew on back in the late 80s as well as a child. But do you remember flying on these as well, Nev?
I never flew on a 727. I did fly on a BAC 111 from Luton to Belfast once.
Who was that with?
That might have even been was it a Ryanair? I don't know.
Didn't Ryanair have a BAC one?
They did, yes. But yeah, I mean, gosh, noisy was the name of the game with both of those aircraft, actually. But with the hush kits fitted, it was a far more reasonable experience, I think, for people outside on the ground.
Do you know you heard much about the BAC, the illustrious BAC 111, Armando, over in the US?
No, there was a few airlines that had them here also. That was slightly before my time, though. Sorry.
Nick, what about you?
No, again, I'm far too young.
Oh, listen to it, honestly, what you like.
He
Armando,
says with a big birthday coming up.
Oh.
Micah says he used to fly 111s on Allegheny, and I correct me if I'm wrong, I think Allegheny was bought by U.S. Air and then became U.S. Airways and stuff. So I think they might have made it over to U.S. Air at some point. But yeah, there was a few. There was quite a few here in the U.S.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Did BA have the 111s, Nev? Or did they not?
No,
No.
I don't think they did.
I wonder why. It's a British-built aircraft. I'm surprised BA didn't have any of those.
Yeah. Oh, actually, no. I'm sorry. They did. I beg your pardon. They did have some. Yes. Back in the day, yes, they did. In fact, they operated them out of Gatwick for the holiday routes as well. I think. Yes. Yeah.
Now, Amando, you've got the last story in the commercial news, all about a very special museum that I really want to get and go and have a look at.
Yeah, it's not much of a story, more of an update. I've had a couple of people, actually some listeners that have asked me about the status of this museum. Now, we did a story on this a couple of months ago, how it was going to be renamed the Sullenberger Aviation Museum here in Charlotte. But finally, some artists' renditions are being published. Carlos, I think there's some pictures there that we're going to put up. But finally, get a date also. So we're looking at summer 2024 when the museum is going to open. Now, I thought it was pretty good to begin with, but it was a little outdated as far as the facilities themselves go. For us av geeks, the aircraft themselves inside the hangar are pretty cool. And I think they're going to have a really nice interactive display with all their current aircraft, which are all sitting on the side of a runway right now. Actually, on the closed runway 523 there at Charlotte Douglas. But most notably, obviously, the Airbus, the A320 from US Air Flight 1549, Cactus 1549 with Chelsea Sullenberger. That aircraft has been preserved in the hangar there at this museum. And like I said, it was a great exhibit before. So all of you guys that have come to Charlotte, you're just going to have to postpone your trips or start planning your trips for the summer of 2024 when this museum opens up. It's going to be pretty cool.
It looks good. It looks really good outside there.
Yeah. I mean, even in the old museum, when you walk around the Airbus, the A320, and you see the damage that was done, yet at the same time think the damage that wasn't done, it's pretty impressive. It was a really impressive interactive exhibit, and they're going to have news stories playing from that day and news from print news and television news and things like that. But it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it looks good. I would like to get across and see that. It's one of the things I want to do. Yeah. But Nev, moving on to the next part of the show, what's coming up next?
Well, it's the start of the month, so that means we say thank you to our Patreon donators. And, of course, without which we can't run the show. So we really appreciate all of your contributions. And this month, it's Derek Smith, Bill Aronek, Sam Dawson, Logan Lynch, Alex Robinson, Dirk S., Sasha Beer, Stephen Ivey, Nick Codling, thank you, Nick, Luis Cachares, Alan White, Stephen Howland, Tanya Wyman, Nick Hewitt, Masha Gertz, Ruben Wells, Neil Lamborn, Graham Haley, Jonathan Warner, Jordan Rose, Andrew Wilson, Captain Jeff, Adam Spink, Liz Piper, Jeff Ward, Benjamin Todd, Jenny Parkinson, Evan Shue, Stuart Backer, and Stephanie Plummer. And for those who have contributed by PayPal, it's Mazuz Kareem. Thank you, Mazuz. Craig Urasoko and Richard Adams. Thank you, one and all, for your superb contributions as ever. Many thanks.
Yes, thank you to everyone who has contributed, as always, this month to Patreon and PayPal. We all do very much appreciate your help each month, and we've got some exciting plans, I think, next year, haven't we, Nev? My diary,
yes, we have,
my diary is a lot more open next year. We're going to make an effort of doing a lot more next year, I think, for the show. So we're going to get some great stuff on board. So it's time. It's time for our Caption This Picture of the Week. Now, it's your chance to comment on a picture that I post on our social medias on a Wednesday. And I'll pop the picture up on the screen there. Now, Armando, could you explain what's going on with this picture here?
Well, it's taken from inside of an aircraft, and this is something Nev has never seen this because this has to be back in 23, 24A. I would say, right? Looking at the left
That's not
side.
a seat I'm familiar with at all. No.
Yeah. So Nev, this is what the airplane looks like if you were to
Okay.
have to use the aft lav. But as we look out onto the wing of this aircraft, we see a lot of, I'm going to use the American term, duct tape, holding the wing together. So off we go with the, what do we get here? Do we have music for this? We don't do the music for this, right?
No, we don't need any music. So, kicking off the first one, we'll go with Mr. Stuart Asler, a good friend of the show. Stuart says, when you said we were going to practice the slats and flaps jam checklist, I assumed you meant the simulator.
Haha.
Nev can take the next one.
Yes, some wag called Nev has said, if you can't fix it with gaffer tape, you haven't used enough. Which is actually true, I have to say.
Nick, you want to take it?
Nick?
As he works feverishly.
As he gets himself
I'm
off
muting
mute.
myself there. So EasyJet cancels flights to Budapest after it fails in dramatically taping extra passengers to the wings, only to lose them within the first 1,000 feet of flight in new trials. Then running out of duct tape to restrain the other drunken passengers on board.
That was a very well thought out comment.
Right.
Very well, Stephen. Yeah. John Luke says Russian Airbus finally leaves the field after many of the heavier parts were removed.
Ah, yes. Michael says it's taken an age, but at long last, one PT UK host has finally boarded a budget airline. The whole experience, along with the view from seat 1A, left him speechless.
I wonder who they're talking about.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ben says, alas, it was discovered that despite the name, speed tape does not make it go faster.
Nick, you want the next one with Jenny?
Yeah, we got our good friend of the show, Jenny, co-pilot to pilot. Now, don't get in a flap, but...
And also, a member of the chat room this evening, Richard, says, in airplane film style, so we're going to go, light in the cabin is flashing. Don't panic, passenger. Are you telling us absolutely everything? The crew member says, no, sir, we are out of speed tape. Riot now follows in the cabin. Light now flashing. Okay, panic! You have to know the film Airplane to get all that. But
Yes.
Nev, what's Sean saying?
Sean simply says stick and rudder.
Oh, I like Bill's here. It says, the captain speaking is getting some additional help to stick the landing.
Nick, you got Chris's
Yeah,
one.
Chris Gurney reckons it will be good for another 50 hours.
Ah, yeah, he's Steph Smith says, if it doesn't move, and it should, use WD-40. If it moves, and it shouldn't, use speed tape till it stops moving.
And then Chris says, now we know why they want to keep the shades down.
Bob says, duct tape is for ducks. Speed tape is for planes.
Excellent.
Very good. Have we got any in the chat room, Nev?
It's a great question, and I'm going to have a look. Sorry for the pause. Mark Priestley says, new lightning strike, defense tape.
See, it's topical because we just talked about it.
Just did that. Lee says, we got tape, but where's the engine? Dirk says, duct tape simulator version 2.0.
Would that be a great computer game? Can you, a simulator. Can you imagine simulating like all the things you can do with duct tape and your
We
different
got a good one
scenarios?
from Micah, actually. Do you know how many ducks they have to kill just to make one roll of that tape? Brilliant. Sure, you can buy duck-friendly versions these days.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a garage full of this stuff, I swer by it.
What, ducks?
Duct tape. No, not ducks, no.
Whack.
Although I am partial to a hoist and duck roll. To be fair.
Aren't we all?
Don't forget to tune in on our social medias on a Wednesday, where we're going to pop another picture up, hopefully next week, of the humorous kind of things that we find on the internet. This week's actually, I'm going to say thank you to our very own Armando, because Armando, you found that picture this week.
The internet. You're welcome.
Thank you. And while you're on the screen there, Armando, would you like to introduce your part of the show?
Yeah, it's not going to be a happy one this week, but let's hit the button.
Angel 16, 8340. Okay. Fire seat buggy.
Okay, well, as most of you listening to the show have probably seen, there was a Air Force Special Operations CV-22 Osprey that went down in Japan just in the last 24, 40 hours or so. I'm going to read the Air Force Special Operations Command Public Affairs statement with an update that they just made this morning. The U.S. military, alongside the Japan Coast Guard, the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, local law enforcement, and Japanese civilian volunteers, is continuing search and rescue operations for the CV-22 crew following the mishap that occurred on November 29th off the shore of Yakushima Island in Japan. Search and rescue operations consist of combination of air, surface, and subsurface search of water and coastline in the vicinity of Yakushima in order to locate the crew members. The 7 airmen are in a status that means duty status whereabouts unknown. At this time, they can confirm that only one set of remains has been recovered. Our sincere gratitude to all the units and the Japanese partners involved in helping us locate our airmen. Units involved in the search and rescue operation are the Japan Coast Guard, the Self-Defense Forces, the Pacific Air Forces, the United States Pacific Fleet, the U.S. Marine Corps Pacific, Special Operations Command Pacific, and the unit from which this aircraft came from, the 353rd Special Operations Wing at Kadena Air Base in Japan. I personally knew 2 of the individuals that are currently missing, and I'd flown with them. So this is a time where, for me, it's interesting, having been removed from the organization for a couple years now. To me, it was always amazing how the Air Force and the military and the services all come together in these kinds of times. What is known so far, obviously, we're going to wait for an investigation to happen, but some of the basic facts that we know already is that the aircraft went down in day VMC, visual meteorological conditions. The cruise status as of this afternoon, and as you guys can imagine, I'm getting regular updates from friends and from the command. People are reaching out to me because our community is fairly small. It's really only a couple hundred people, but the cruise status is still not known. It was a flight of 2 Ospreys that was on this training mission. But I guess this is a good time to kind of explain, because I think people get a little maybe not apprehensive, but maybe skeptical when every mishap says it's a training mission, right? I mean, we all kind of think that, oh, everything's a training mission. Well, we train a lot. And there is risk even during the training missions, because the each Air Force unit has a purpose, right? I mean, that sounds very basic, but there's actually very defined purposes and very essential tasks and skills that each unit is tasked with. It's actually written in a document that says your job as a unit, as a commander, is to make sure that we can do this in support of a larger regional security plan or contingency plan. That is how funding is received for those units, the flying funds, the support funds, and those funds go to the air crews and the ground crews being the best that they can possibly be at that very specific skill set. This specifically for Air Force and Air Force Special Operations can be a combination of pilot proficiency, flight engineer proficiency, gunner proficiency, or what we call user proficiency. So we have very defined training tasks that we're going to accomplish for each flight, and that is it's usually a multitude of tasks. Maybe 7, 8, 9 tasks that we want to complete for each crew member and their crew position for that flight. When I talk about users, that can be search and rescue teams, other services, other countries. So we have a lot of people. Like, we can't just be good at flying. We have to be good at dropping the people off that we're going to drop off, and then they have to be good at getting on and off the airplane, or maybe they're going to use a rope or a fast rope or litter. So all of those things are practiced constantly, day and night, in order to be able to do the things when we're actually called to do the things. For the Osprey specifically, low-level flight, on a typical flight, we'll have some low-level flying, takeoffs, landings, some gunnery work in range, hoists, hovers, maybe even shipboard operations. All of that is going to take place during the course of one 4-hour sortie. So as you guys can imagine, it's very busy. It takes a lot of planning, but we're doing the same things in training that we're going to do when called to do the things, or in combat or contingencies. From a personal standpoint, I was in a leadership position by the time I retired from the Air Force. And what happens in these kinds of situations is honestly, the family, the organization, the military family comes together. It's amazing. It's something that I miss, to be honest with you. I miss dearly, and people have been reaching out, both to seek information from me, but as well as just kind of seek advice, right? Or just maybe to vent, right? I've fielded a couple phone calls of a few friends that are still in, just to kind of express their grief. Just like any civilian organization, there are critical incident plans. So you have a sort of a plan on the shelf that you can go to, and then a big part of it is controlling the information, right? And that's harder and harder with the internet nowadays. But a lot of what I've been doing over the last almost 48 hours now has been helping control the information, helping tamper speculation. It's very important most importantly, the families, but the units to have some time to process what's happening to them. And the internet is just really, really hard to do that with. So that's a lot of what happens initially with this kinds of things. And then, as information comes about, then they'll publicize it, and then, we'll get it in the media and so on and so on. But here you go.
It's very, very sad indeed, isn't it? And you mentioned there it's might have been up to a 4-hour sortie. So these flights take a lot of planning, and the briefing involved must be extensive as well. And let's be clear, these are professional guys and girls operating these aircraft, and in aviation there's always a lot of emphasis on contingency and always leaving yourself a way out, and what happens if this happens, or what happens if something else happens. So that's, I would imagine, very much part of the briefing, but still things can go wrong, unfortunately, and we'll have to wait to see on what really does happen. But yeah, the internet's not a good place sometimes with these sorts of stories, and ill-informed speculation is just awful, not just for the wider community, but for the families and those who are closest to the people involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Osprey has a bad rap, and publicly, people that are incredibly uninformed love to bash the Osprey, because every time that there is a mishap, it makes the news, and then it's already got this I don't know, this thing that they're trying to, I don't know if it's promulgate or dispel. I don't know who's on what side, but we simply don't know. I mean, they could have taken birds. There, when we fly low level over the ocean, we're at 100 feet. That doesn't give you a lot of time to take any actions. You might get a little bit of a climb from the speed that you have. If it's a catastrophic mechanical failure, you're pretty limited in any airplane. I mean, you could be flying a Cessna Caravan at 100-foot low level, and you don't have a lot of time. We've seen plenty of mishaps in all kinds of military aircraft, fighter jets, helicopters, rotary wing, tilt rotor, where the mission set that we do is dangerous, and we take on that risk. We know the risk of flying at 100 feet or 200 feet off the water, or in the case of helicopter mishaps, flying at night on night vision goggles at 50 feet. It's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing. Mishaps are going to happen. So I just hate to see that people are jumping on this whole, the Osprey is a terrible airplane and should be grounded and all that. But we just don't know, right?
Just as a matter of interest, Armando, to help with the investigation on this, do these types of aircraft have a data recorder like commercial airliners do?
Yeah, and we've seen that with some of the fighter jet mishaps, where all the data is stored in our version of a flight data recorder and voice recorders and things like that.
Okay.
So maybe not necessarily voice recorders, but all the data is there.
Well, let's hope that they get to the bottom of what's happened. And as always, all the community, I think, all our thoughts are with all the families and friends affected by this.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
So next story comes to us from is it Lanes or Janes.com? Lanes.com? Janes.com?
Janes.com.
Yeah. This is all about Romania receiving their first F-16 from Norway. Now, we all know there's quite a few F-16s about. Romania has received from Norway the first of 32 surplus Lockheed Martin F-16 Fighting Falcon combat aircraft it contracted in November last year. The Norwegian Armed Forces announced the transfer of the first 3 aircraft on the 28th of November, saying the jets were flown by Romanian Air Force pilots from Riga Air Station to their future home operating station at the 86th Fetisti Air Base in eastern Romania. The sale of the F-16s will strengthen and modernise the defences of Romania, an allied nation along NATO's eastern flank that's also a neighbour of the Ukraine. Norwegian Defence Minister Bjorn Aron Gram was quoted saying at the official handover of the aircraft. Romania is acquiring 32 F-16 AM BM Block 15 midlife upgrade aircraft, as well as spares and support equipment from Norway. Sorry, got a frog in my throat here. For 388 million euros, or 386 million US dollars, at the time the deal was finalised back in 2022. It's the largest ever sale of military equipment in Norway's history. The Norwegian Armed Forces did not disclose which variants of the F-16 made up the delivery batch, but the accompanying press release showed a twin-seat F-16 BM with its new remaining serial number of 1632 as one of the 3 jets. Deliveries will run through to the end of 2025, by which time the Romanian Air Force will be field 49 F-16s, including the 17 F-16 AM and BM Block 15 MLU aircraft recently received from Portugal. The Block 15 MLU provides an analogous, oh, what a word is that? I'll throw that in there.
Analogous. Just make sure you don't get the emphasis on the wrong place.
Capability of the US, I'm just imagining loads of 6-pack dials everywhere, of the F-16 Cs, Ds and Block 50 and 52 aircraft. And also the United States Coast Guard In other news from Flight Global, to acquire more former Navy H-60s amid a shift to an all-Sikorsky helicopter fleet. The US Coast Guard has received approval to acquire 20 former US Navy Sikorsky H-60 helicopters, a move coming as the service looks to eventually operate an all-Sikorsky MH-60T helicopter fleet. US Coast Guard Rear Admiral Michael Campbell on the 30th of November disclosed broad strokes of the service's fleet plan, citing efforts to extend the life of its MH-60Ts and plans to acquire updated engines from GE Aerospace for the helicopters. The United States Coast Guard said it intends to eventually operate only one helicopter type, the MH-60T, meaning it intends at some point to divest all its 98 Airbus helicopters, MH-65Ds and Es and the AS-365s. Well, when this might happen remains unclear. The Coast Guard now operates 48 MH-60Ts, a variant of the H-60 Sikorsky produced for the United States Navy. Several of the MH-60Ts are actually former Navy H-60s that were converted to Coast Guard standard. Campbell, the United States Coast Guard Director of Acquisition Program, says the service has received approval to acquire another 20 former Navy SH-60s, though he doesn't say when those 20 aircraft are to be converted to the MH-60T standard and compose the first acquisition phase, expected to include 27 total former Navy helicopter, Campbell says. He also adds that the United States Coast Guard eventually expects to operate 127 of the Sikorsky aircraft. Wow, that's pretty good coverage for the US coast. The service has been clear that it intends to shift to an all-Sikorsky fleet in the fiscal year 2024, and budget documents of the United States Coast Guard says it intends to decommission 6 MH-65s. And on the 30th of November, the United States Coast Guard received the first of a planned 45 new MH-60T airframes from Sikorsky. The service using those airframes, which include only the nose section, cabin and aft section of the aircraft, to refurbish its existing MH-60Ts, allowing them to be flown into the 2040s. Wow, this is a heck of a helicopter, Armando, and it just goes to show that it can be used for pretty much everything.
Yeah, this basically version of a Black Hawk. There's a great show out, Coast Guard Alaska, Coast Guard Mission Critical. Those are kind of docu-series. Amazing what Coast Guard pilots do. I have a lot of respect because the kind of like I was just talking about, when a lot of us pilots look at the sky and go, oof, we're not flying in that. The Coast Guard, people don't tend to get lost in clear day weather. When you're talking about fishing vessels that are out there, and you're talking about lost hunters, when you're talking about aircraft that are missing, they are often in some of the worst weather conditions, and Coast Guard takes to the air, in a lot of conditions that the rest of us would say, I'm going to sit here with my cup of tea and wait for a couple hours. The Black Hawk, it's very, very capable helicopter. I want to go back to the Romania story real quick, because one of my, we used to, when I was based over there in Mildenhall, we had a very close security partnership with the Romanians, and we would often travel to Constanta, to the 56th Air Base, I think, 56th Air Base, 57th Air Base. And one of the coolest parts of that air base was there was, behind all the operations buildings, a bunch of MiG-21s and MiG-23s and a couple even MiG-29s that were parked there. And the Romanian Air Force was nice enough to go out there and let us poke around and, jump into the aircraft, and they would show us around and kind of talk to us about their beginnings, but as in their operations in the 80s and the 90s, operating these Russian aircraft. And really cool that they're getting these F-16s now. Jonathan Warner said in the chat rooms, even the early models of the F-16 retrofitted are very, very capable aircraft. And I gotta tell you, the Romanian pilots that we flew with and against, because we would do training exercises where they would try to do aerial intercepts with us, they're some of the best pilots out there. They're really, really good at what they do. So I can't wait to see what they can do with F-16s.
And I got to say, Armando, one of my favourite films still is Black Hawk Down.
I mean, yeah, that's a very raw film.
Yeah.
You got to be in the right mood to watch that.
Yeah. But no, thanks for putting those stories together for us, Amando. Appreciate that. And obviously, the chat room are definitely getting on board, especially Jonathan Warner. He does appreciate his military stuff, doesn't he? Bless him. But
He's the one.
He's the one. Nev, it's the time of the show where we hand things over to you to give stuff away.
Yes, it's the competition, and I wasn't here last week, but I was intrigued by the questions from last week's competition because I would not have got these at all. But I'm pleased to say we have a number of winners in the hat, which I shall be drawing out in a second. Last week's the prize is Ask the Pilot by Patrick Smith. I think you've got that book, haven't you?
I have. It's at home. I'm in the PTUK Master Suite studio, so
lovely. Well, that's the prize. The questions, in fact, there was two questions all sort of rolled into one, really. The first question was, who was the first launch customer outside of the USA of the Boeing 737? Now, I wouldn't have known this, but it says that Lufthansa became the launch customer of the 737 on February the 19th, 1965, after an order was placed for 21 units, which were worth $67 million. Subsequently, the flag carrier of Germany received its first 737-100 on December the 28th, 1967, and became the first airline outside of the US to launch a new Boeing plane. I didn't know that. And the second part of the question was, what airline was started as the result of the sale of those Boeing 737s to that launch customer? The answer is People Express. And I'm sure we've seen pictures of the 747 of People Express on the internet and what have you. But again, another thing that I didn't actually know, that was the result of that. So anyway, in the hat here we have a number. I think we've got about 7 or 8 correct answers. I shall pick one out at random and let's have a look. And it is Michael Howie from Germany, I believe, actually. I think we've sort of seen his email. So, Michael, well done. Excellent job, sir. Carlos will send you the book. I will send you a quick email to get your address, and we will send it off to you.
Yeah, I'll pop that in a little bag and get that sent off to you as soon as I know where to post it to. So,
yes.
Yeah, get your address in and we'll get that off to you. Well done. Congratulations. Now, Nev, what are you giving away to our lovely listeners and viewers this week?
Here it is. It's called 30 Seconds to Impact. It's the story of BA 38, which crashed short of the runway at 27 left at Heathrow. Written by Pete Burkill and his wife, Maria Burkill. I bought this when it first came out, actually, and it's a fascinating read of the whole story of it. And I really recommend this. So I'm going to give this book away next week to the person that can answer the following question. Now, obviously, we know that most people know the reason for the aircraft crashing in the first place, the 777 crashing, was that both engines ended up in idle and not producing any power or hardly any power. And then subsequent inspection showed that there were ice crystals in parts of the engine, which was affecting the fuel flow. But of course, as we know, everybody survived that accident. So the question is, how was Pete Burkill able to extend the glide of the aircraft so that it didn't impact the ground before the perimeter fence on runway 27 left at Heathrow? How was Pete Burkill able to extend the glide of the aircraft so that it didn't impact the ground before the perimeter fence on runway 27 left at Heathrow? As we know, it just made it across the perimeter fence and landed just short of actually on the threshold of the runway. So if you would like to enter that competition, it's podcast@planetalkinguk.com, podcast@planetalkinguk.com, and we shall draw the winners out of the hat next week. So good luck with that, and we'll post that in the socials this week as well for you.
Now, Nev, if someone wants to find out a good way or way of finding out other than watching or looking through the internet interwebs, they could go and look at a certain P2K milestone show where we had a discussion or a very important talk about this, couldn't they?
Yes.
Number 200.
It was. That's right. Yes, absolutely.
Was it 300? Oh, let me just check. It was.
Oh no, it was
300. 300. Yeah. Our 300 show. Yeah.
Yeah, because our chum Adam happened to be in the tower at Heathrow that day, and so for those who were there on the day, Adam gave a very good description of all the things that happened there. So that was very interesting. Yes.
Yes. If you search through on our Facebook, our YouTube page, back to episode 300, and you might find some inspiration if you watch Adam's talk on there. It was very good, wasn't it, Nev? What he done that day.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
So we're going to start to wrap things up on tonight's show. I know Nev's had a heavy week, and I think we've all had a bit of a busy week this week. But we'll start with Armando this week. Armando, first off, are we going to have you on the show next Friday?
As of now, yes.
Correct answer. You win.
Yeah, it's always interesting how the schedule looks clear, and then these trips tend to sort of start popping up.
So what's going on in the world of Armando in next week then?
The usual, just kind of jumping back and forth between airplanes. Got a Hawker trip tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon-ish, and then I'm hoping to get some work done on the biplane, trying to make a new cover for it and things like that, and then I'm sure something will pop up, probably a Pilates trip here and there.
So you're going to, well, I was going to say, with the winter approaching even at your neck of the woods, I suppose it's time to get the thermal cover made for the biplane.
Well, I've been flying down to, I think, 38 degrees is my coldest so far, and it was tolerable. I don't know that I would go much lower than that, but Nick will appreciate this. I've been riding in a motorcycle riding suit.
Yeah, you need a heated vest, Armando. That's the latest thing I'm about to try out. Is you can have a USB power pack, and it will give you sort of 2 or 3 hours of endurance of a nice warm vest that you can wear under your clothes.
That would be the way to do it, because I only have an 8 amp alternator on the engine. Yeah. That is enough to run some radios. That's about it.
Wow. Yeah, because we're experiencing. We got down to. I think we got down to -2 here this week. Nev, you're a bit more further inland as such. Are you experiencing the minus temperatures your end of the
Yes,
UK?
a tad. And actually, Dublin was snowing yesterday when I was out, just before we left. I thought, oh no, we're going to have to de-ice, but we got away before that, luckily. But definitely some Scandinavian weather has arrived in the United Kingdom and Ireland. Particularly chilly yesterday, I thought. Next week for me, all sorts of things going on, actually. No flying, a bit of driving. On Wednesday, Wednesday next week, I'm doing a presentation to some end users of audiovisual over at Stratford at East London, the site of the former Olympic area. Then on Thursday, I'm doing, that Thursday's going to be difficult, or rather Friday's probably going to be difficult, because I'm sharing a room with a lot of university audiovisual managers for the day and the evening. That means I'll probably have to take some paracetamol with me, because those guys and girls, honestly, their capacity for having a drink is substantial, far better than mine, I have to say. So I shan't be having too much because I've got to be in Oxford on Friday. So yes, quite a hectic week overall. But I shall be on the show next Friday, the 8th, all being well.
Well, I've got my Christmas works due next Friday, so I shall be heading over to our glorious city of Norwich to the Delia. If you're in the UK, you'll know who Delia is, who's a chef here in the UK. But I'm going to her restaurant for our Christmas Works party, which should be interesting because there's going to be a DJ and a disco there. And you know what happens when I go to something like that, Nev, and there's someone else doing the job that I normally do. Yes.
And go, he's not doing that properly. No, I've got better cable management than he has. And
yeah. So next week I'm going to be leaving. I'll be leaving Nev in charge. He can be in charge next week, and hopefully we'll get a super sub on as well next week. But Nik, what's going on in the world of Nik next week? I suppose you'll be wrapping up warm on the old motorcycle.
Yeah, it's not getting out of the garage much at the moment. I'm much preferring the heated seats in the car. So, we'll stick with that for the time being. I think we had a bit of snow yesterday. So, it's, not been too pleasant. But, very busy with work at the moment. And, it's getting right in the way of doing podcast stuff. It's outrageous.
Oh, dear. I suppose you're lucky, Nev, because you've got, I think I'm right in thinking you've got heated steering wheel in the Banana?
Yes, I have. But the only disadvantage about having a heated steering wheel is that you then want a heated gear lever knob as well, because that is very cold when you've moved your hand from the steering wheel to the stick shift, as Armando would call it. But of course, had I bought the auto version, that wouldn't have applied, would it? But there you go. So, actually, it's a good thing to have, the heated steering wheel. I like it.
One of the things I miss, Nev, with the weather as it is now, is I miss, because I've obviously not got my Transit, the custom van anymore, is that heated front windscreen.
Oh, yes. Yes, I think many other cars have it now, but Ford had the patent on it for many years, and nobody else could get near it. It's a brilliant piece of engineering, and it just clears the windscreen very quickly indeed. I suppose, presumably, they've got it on a lot of aircraft as well, in order to stop misting up.
Actually, question for you, Armando. When you go to your aircraft, obviously yours are hangared, so it's not so bad. But when you go to an aircraft initially, if it's parked out on the ramp, when the weather is, as it is now, minus temperatures, does it take long to heat the actual aircraft up, as in the interior of the aircraft for you and obviously your passengers?
Heating up, no, not generally. If you have an APU, that's pretty hot bleed air that's coming through. It'll warm up fairly quick. Cooling it down is a different issue. But similar to what you guys are talking about, more importantly is we can't have any frost. So early morning frost, if your aircraft stays outside, that's kind of a no-go unless you really want to pay the money to get de-iced, but that's expensive for a private operator. So you either hangar it, or you just got to wait till the sun comes up and melts it off.
Yeah, unlike those guys at Buffalo. Hey.
Yeah, those guys are crazy up there.
So, Nev, for the benefit of those who may not know, where can people find out more about the show online?
Yes, have a look for the socials on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Just search for Plain Talking UK and you'll find us there. You can always email the show at podcast@plaintalkinguk.com, or you can send us a WhatsApp on +44 757 2249 That's +44 757 2249 for pictures, comments, or anything you like. Website is all the W's, plaintalkinguk.com, and you can also join us on YouTube, as many people do, and join us in the chat room as well. Just search for Plain Talking UK on YouTube, and you will find us there.
And that's it. Well, we're going to wrap up the show then and say a big thanks to everyone in the chat room who's joined us tonight. All the usual faces in there as well. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for tonight's show. So don't forget, the guys will be back next Friday with another live show. I won't be here. I'll probably be 3 pints in at the moment of water, obviously. But have a great show, guys. Enjoy yourselves, won't you? And Nev, if you want to do the outro, I'm going to hit some buttons this side.
Yes, excellent. Well, thanks very much, Dee, for everybody for joining us this evening. Really enjoyed your company. Excellent stuff in the chat room as always. And we'll be posting more details about the competition again during the week. In the meantime, I hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe and see you next week. Bye for now.